Abandoned and deemed worthless by alien traders, she was left to die, until a human saw her value and chose to save her, proving that hope can be found even in the darkest places. The cold, metallic corridors of the slave transport ship echoed with the faint shuffles and whispered cries of the prisoners crammed within. Among them were dozens of alien beings from countless star systems, bound and broken, their wills crushed under the weight of captivity. The alien traders had been ruthless, auctioning off every single slave at exorbitant prices, their greed unquenchable. But there was one, a young alien girl, gaunt and fragile, whom they deemed worthless. She was left behind, discarded in a dark holding cell, a shadow among shadows. Her skin, once radiant, was now pallid and scarred from years of abuse. Her eyes, however, still flickered with a stubborn spark of life. She had survived longer than anyone expected, and that endurance was about to be tested further. For weeks, the girl remained forgotten, ignored even by the crew that managed the transport. Supplies dwindled, and hope became a distant memory. The traders had no interest in her anymore. She was considered a liability, a burden without value. Yet fate had other plans. The transport ship docked at a bustling spaceport, a hub for trade and commerce where species from across the galaxy converged. Here, among the crowds and the clamor, a human named Captain Elias Drake entered the scene. Elias was no ordinary buyer. He was a man with a reputation, a former soldier turned humanitarian, known for his unwavering resolve to rescue those trapped in the shadows of galactic cruelty. Elias wandered through the market with purpose, eyes scanning the rows of chained beings as others bartered greedily. The general indifference and callousness left him cold, but one corner of the market caught his attention. Behind a rusted gate, barely noticeable, was the forgotten cell where the girl was left to perish. The traders had not even bothered to put her up for sale. She was simply an afterthought, discarded and invisible. When Elias approached, the girl barely lifted her head, her voice a fragile whisper. "Please, don't leave me here." Something in her plea, raw and desperate, stirred a long-dormant part of Elias. Without hesitation, he broke the locks and freed her from the cold metal confines. Despite her weakened state, she clung to life, and with Elias's help, she was brought aboard his ship, a place where freedom was more than a promise. Over the days and weeks that followed, Elias tended to her wounds, physical and emotional alike. The girl, whom he learned was named Lyra, began to heal in ways the traders never anticipated. She learned to trust again, to laugh, to hope. Her past was filled with pain, but in Elias's presence, she found a flicker of a future worth fighting for. But freedom came with its own challenges. The galaxy was still a dangerous place for a worthless slave-turned-free being. Many sought to reclaim their lost property, and the shadow of the slave trade loomed large. Elias knew their journey was far from over. Together, they would face threats that tested their courage and resilience. But for the first time in a long while, Lyra was not alone. In the silence of the ship's quarters, as stars streaked past the viewport, Elias promised her one thing, that she would never be just another discarded soul again. And in that vow, they both found a new kind of strength. The story of the worthless girl left behind was just beginning, and with humanity's indomitable spirit, it was destined to become a story of hope, survival, and the unyielding power of compassion. In the weeks following her rescue, Lyra's transformation was remarkable. The small, frail girl who had been left to die in a forgotten cell was now beginning to reclaim her identity. Her limbs grew stronger, her voice more confident. Elias was patient, knowing that healing scars, especially those carved by cruelty, required time and understanding. "You're safe now," Elias said one evening, as he watched her stare out at the swirling cosmos. "No one can touch you here." Lyra nodded, though her eyes betrayed the lingering shadows of her past. "Safe. It's a strange word. I'm still learning what it means." Elias smiled gently. "We'll learn together." Their conversation stretched late into the artificial night, a fragile bond weaving between them. Elias shared stories of Earth, of humanity's resilience and compassion, a planet where freedom was a right, not a commodity. Lyra absorbed these tales, letting the hope sink deep into her soul. It was a stark contrast to the galaxy she knew, a cold expanse where beings were bought and sold like merchandise, their lives disposable. One afternoon, as Elias adjusted the medical scanners, he found evidence of internal injuries that hadn't yet fully healed. He sighed, "You've been through hell, Lyra. But every scar is a testament to your strength." She smiled faintly, reaching out to touch his hand. "You see me as more than just a survivor." "Because you are," he replied. "More than anyone here ever realized." But the past never stays buried for long. A whisper in the galactic underworld soon spread. A human had bought the worthless alien girl. A curiosity, a defiance against the ruthless slave traders. Such news attracted attention, and not the kind Elias wanted. One evening, the ship's alarms blared, jolting Elias and Lyra from their uneasy peace. The vessel was under attack. A squadron of sleek, black ships surrounded them, weapons charged. Elias's heart sank as he recognized the insignia, notorious bounty hunters and slavers, hired by the original traders to reclaim what they'd lost. "Prepare for boarding," Elias commanded, hands steady despite the rising tension. "We won't give them what they want." Lyra, though still fragile, stood beside him, eyes blazing with newfound courage. The girl who was once worthless now faced danger head-on. The boarding party breached the ship, ruthless and efficient. The battle that followed was fierce, every moment a test of wills. Elias fought with precision honed by years of combat, protecting Lyra as she found the courage to fight back in her own way. Using makeshift weapons and improvised tactics, she surprised their attackers with unexpected ferocity. In the chaos, Elias locked eyes with Lyra. "We survived this together," he promised. They did. With grit and determination, they repelled the attackers, forcing the bounty hunters to retreat, but not without a warning. The war for Lyra's freedom was far from over. After the attack, Elias knew they had to leave the trade routes behind. The galaxy's underbelly was too dangerous, too filled with predators ready to pounce on the vulnerable. He plotted a course for a hidden system, one known only to a few trusted allies. A place where Lyra could begin to rebuild her life away from the horrors of her past. But the journey was not easy. The constant threat of pursuit hung like a shadow over them. Each new star system brought risks, and trust was a luxury they could not afford lightly. During long nights, Lyra wrestled with her memories, the screams, the chains, the loss. Yet with Elias's unwavering support, she learned to face her fears. "You are not what they say you are," he told her once, as she wept quietly. "You are stronger. You are more." Lyra clung to those words like a lifeline. Finally, the ship entered the orbit of a green and blue planet, distant from the wars and greed of the galactic core. Elias smiled, pointing to the vibrant world below. "This is where your new story begins." Lyra gazed down at the forests and oceans, tears welling in her eyes. It was a place of peace, of hope, a chance to grow beyond the label of worthless. Together, they prepared to step into this new world. The road ahead would be long, filled with challenges, but they faced it united. And in the depths of space, where darkness once reigned, a single spark of humanity shone brightly, proving that even the worthless could rise and change the fate written for them. The planet beneath their feet, Nova Gaia, was more than just a refuge, it was a fragile promise of a new beginning. Lyra had never imagined such a place existed, a place where alien refugees and humans could live side by side, where kindness wasn't a currency but a way of life. Yet, as she stepped onto the soft soil, her heart was heavy with the weight of years spent in chains and captivity. The scars ran deep, both visible and invisible, reminders of the torment she had endured at the hands of her cruel captors. Elias had promised her safety, but safety felt elusive. Every whisper of the wind seemed to carry echoes of her past. The long cold nights haunted her with memories. The cold metal cuffs that bit into her wrists, the stinging lash of the overseer's whip, the despair of being counted as nothing more than property. She had lived a decade as a slave, her worth measured by others and thrown away like garbage once she was deemed surplus. But here, on this distant world, under alien suns that bathed the sky in gold and purple, Lyra was learning to breathe again. Slowly, she began to peel back the layers of fear and mistrust that had encased her heart. Elias's steady presence was a beacon, a constant reminder that not all humans were cruel or indifferent. He never forced her to speak or act before she was ready. Instead, he listened, waited, and gave her space to heal at her own pace. At first, she kept to herself, watching from the edges of the settlement, her eyes wide and cautious. The settlers were a diverse mix, beings from dozens of worlds, each carrying their own burdens, their own stories of loss and survival. Some had fled wars, others oppression, but all shared a common desire for peace. The community was tightly knit, built on mutual respect and cooperation, a stark contrast to the ruthless world Lyra had escaped. In time, she began to help. At first, small tasks, tending to gardens, gathering herbs for the healers, repairing the fragile structures made from scavenged materials. The simple act of nurturing life, coaxing green shoots from the earth, became a form of therapy. It gave her something to focus on beyond the nightmare memories. Each sprout was a sign of hope, proof that life could thrive even in harsh conditions. One afternoon, as Lyra worked beside the healer Myra, a soft voice startled her. "You're stronger than you think." Lyra turned to see a young boy no older than 10, his eyes bright with curiosity and something else, hope. "Why do you say that?" "Because you're still here," he said simply. "You survived when they left you for dead. You're like a hero." Lyra felt a pang in her chest.
Hero?
She had never thought of herself that way. To her, surviving was an act of stubbornness, not bravery. But the boy's words planted a seed, a fragile idea that perhaps she could be more than just a victim. Nighttime was still the hardest. Shadows crept in not just from outside but from within. Dreams haunted her with images of chains, dark corridors, and the cold, merciless faces of her captors. She often woke in cold sweats, heart pounding, gasping for breath. Elias was always there, his arms wrapping around her, grounding her in the present. "You're safe now," he'd whisper. But safety was a fragile veil, easily torn. News came that the slave traders had not forgotten her. They hunted across the stars, driven by greed and cruelty, unwilling to let go of what they saw as stolen property. The rumors chilled the blood of the community. Panic rippled through Nova Gaia. The threat was no longer distant, it was at their doorstep. Lyra refused to be a victim again. She trained relentlessly, learning to wield weapons, to fight, to protect. Each day, she grew stronger, fueled by a burning desire not just to survive but to protect those who had shown her kindness. Elias watched with a mixture of pride and concern. He knew the road ahead was dangerous, but he also knew that Lyra's fire could not be extinguished.
Then the attack came.
The dark ships appeared on the horizon like harbingers of doom, blotting out the stars. Alarms screamed across the settlement as settlers scrambled to their defenses. Explosions rocked the forests around Nova Gaia, fire lighting up the night sky. The battle was brutal and chaotic. Lyra fought with every ounce of strength she had, moving through the chaos with fierce determination. Each shot she fired was a message. She was no longer a discarded slave but a warrior. Amidst the smoke and fire, Elias confronted the slaver commander. The man sneered, mocking Lyra's humanity and worth.
"You bought trash," he spat.
"A worthless slave who will never be more." Elias's eyes blazed with defiance.
"She is free.
She is stronger than you'll ever be. And we will never bow to monsters like you." The battle raged on, but the slavers were defeated. Their ships fled into the void, leaving behind a wounded but unbroken community. The cost was high, homes destroyed, lives lost, but the spirit of Nova Gaia burned brighter than ever. In the aftermath, Lyra stood before her new family, no longer the broken girl left to die but a symbol of resilience and hope. "I was cast aside because they thought I was nothing," she said, her voice steady and strong. "But here I found strength, family, and a purpose. We fight not just for ourselves but for all those who suffer." Her words resonated, inspiring the settlers to rebuild, to stand tall in the face of darkness. Nova Gaia became more than a refuge, it became a beacon, a symbol of resistance and humanity's enduring spirit.
Years passed.
Lyra's scars remained, reminders of her past, but they did not define her.
She became a leader, a healer, a warrior.
The story of the worthless alien girl saved by a human buyer spread across the galaxy, igniting hope in the hearts of the oppressed. And in the quiet moments beneath the endless stars, Lyra whispered a promise, to never forget where she came from, to fight for those still trapped in chains, and to prove that even the discarded can rise to become legends.